Before we delve into this video, I want to show you something. Let's say you have an integer x and the value is 5. And let's say you also have an integer array, and this is, let's say, x array. And let's say it has 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6 as the values. So x is an integer variable and the value stored here is 5. But x array is an array and this is a non-primitive type. This is a primitive type. So what would happen if I try and print x? We just type in x and let's see what happens when we run the program. The result is 5, and that is expected. X had a value 5 stored in it, so when we printed x, the stored value got printed. The value stored in x was 5. Great. What if we print x array? What do you think will happen? X array is an array with 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 in the array. But when we print out this value, this variable, what would happen? You see? It does not print out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Instead, it just prints out an address. That is the address of the memory where the array 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is stored. If you watched the last video of chapter 2 when we talked about passing by value and passing by reference, if you understood what was going on in that video, then you would have no problem understanding why X array is printing this address. So non-primitive types of variables always have the address stored in them, and that address is then pointing to the location where the main object is stored. So here, X array, the variable, only stores this address, and this address is basically the address of the memory where this whole array is stored. But in terms of integer x, there is no such thing. 5 is directly stored in x. Here, this array is not directly stored in X array. Only the address is stored in X array. And in this memory location, where this address points to, in that location, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 reside. So keeping this in mind, let's see what can happen with getters and setters. Let's say in the person class, we have another attribute named children. So let's say we're creating a person who has 3 children. We will store the names of those children in this children array variable. So here we might say string array children. And now let's say we have a children getter and setter method. So here is our get children method and here is our set children method. What's wrong here? Let's see this with an example. Let's go to the main method. Here at first we'll have to define an array with some children's name in there. So let's say we're defining an array children, and this will be a string type array. So let's say John has 3 children. First one's name is Mary, the second one's name is David, and the third one's name is Eric. And here, when we're creating the new person, we specify that this array is used as an input to create the new person John. So now we have this new object P1, and P1's name is John, gender is male, age is 20, and children are this variable, and this variable has Mary, David, and Eric stored in it. Now, there's a problem here, but we'll come to that a little bit later. For now, let's keep things simple. Let's just say that we specify children directly as the children for P1, and children is an array which has Mary, David, and Eric stored in it. So we created the getter and the setter methods for children, right? So let's get children. Let's see what this returns. So let's print that out. And you see, we're still getting an address because when we passed children here, this children variable does not store these names, does not store the array. This children variable only has an address stored in it. And when we say children directly, we're just passing the address here. We're not passing the value of the array. So this got passed to the class, and that got assigned as this variable's value. So this variable now has just an address in it. And when we say return children in getChild method, it just returns whatever is stored in here, and what's stored here is this address. So it just gives me back the address. So that is one thing. But secondly, let's use the setChildren method. Let's say we have another string array. We have this new array, and inside this, let's say we have Mary, we have David, and we have the Grinch. And now let's say we want to set the children for John as new array. Great. So now John's children's names have been changed. The first one's Mary, the second one's David, the third one's Grinch. Now let's actually print out using a for loop and the getChildren method and see whether or not the children of John are indeed Mary, David, and Grinch. So we have this for loop. It starts with I equals 0 and goes until I is still less than the length of p1.getChildren, whichever array p1.getChildren returns. That array's length needs to be greater than I for this loop to keep on going. And we keep on increasing I by 1. And every time, in every loop, we print out the ith element of the array. So this should print out all these 3 strings as a result. Let's see. As you can see, it says Mary, David, and Grinch. So that means we have successfully changed the children's name for John. We created this new array and we assigned this new array using the setChildren method. We assigned this new array as the children of John. And then we just printed it out and see whether or not John, who is P1, whether or not his children are actually Mary, David, and Grinch, and they are. We just printed that out. So now John's children are set, right? They are Mary, David, and Grinch. Now let's say I'm not touching John. Let's say I'm not touching P1. I'm only changing new array. I'm not touching P1. I am not interacting with P1. I'm not interacting with John at all. I'm just changing new array. So let's do that. So let's say I'm changing the first element of new array. So I'm changing the 0th element. And the 0th element for new array is Mary, right? So let's say I just put this as a squirrel. So now new array has 3 elements in it. The first one is squirrel, the second one is David, and the third one is Grinch. So let's print out the different elements of new array. At first we'll print out the value of the 0th element for new array, and then we'll add a comma, and then we'll print out the second new array element, and then we'll add another comma, and we'll print the third new array element, and that's it. And let's see what the result for this is. This should be squirrel, David, and Grinch. So let's delete this first. We don't need this anymore. We already know the result is Mary, David, and Grinch for this part. And let's run this program. You see, because we changed the first value of new array to squirrel, new array was here, right? So new array got changed. The first value became squirrel. The second value we did not change. It remained David. And the third value we did not change either. So it remained as Grinch. So now the new values that are stored in new array are squirrel, David, and Grinch. Remember that we did not touch P1. We did not touch this object at all, right? But after this, let's print the names of the children for John. We'll use the same logic as we had before. We'll have a for loop where I starts from 0 and then I is less than p1.getChildren.length and p1 is still John. So we'll get the array p1.getChildren and then take the length of that array and then we'll say I++. So that's our for loop conditions, and then inside the for loop for each iteration we'll just print out the ith child of John. So let's see what the names of the children of John are now. Let's run this program. But before that, we'll delete this because we know exactly what there is in new array. Now whatever we're printing will be the names of the children of John. So let's run this program. So you see, the names of the children of John are now Squirrel, David, and Grinch. We did not change P1. We did not do anything to P1. We only changed new array to squirrel. We changed the first element of new array to squirrel. We did not touch P1. But we changed new array. However, the children of P1 got changed. We changed new array. We did not even touch P1. Somehow, P1's children names got changed. The first one was supposed to be Mary, but now it's Squirrel. Why did this happen? So this happened here. When we set the children to new array. What is new array? New array is this variable. What's stored in this variable? Let's actually print out and see what's stored in new array. Let's print it out here and let's run the program. You see, new array has this address stored in it. So when we say set children new array, only this gets passed. to the setChildren method. We go to the setChildren method, and here in the setChildren method, this input is basically this address. So we say this.children equals children means we're saying put this address here and then put this address here, and this address is now getting assigned to children, and this children is basically this variable. So we are assigning an address to this variable because remember, non-primitive data are passed by reference. So we only passed the reference. We did not pass the values in the array to this variable children, which is why there is only one array. When we passed it to new children, a new array did not get created. It was the same array, just that two different variables now had the reference to it. So when we changed one of the arrays, which is new array, when we changed the first element to squirrel, the array object got changed. But whatever we passed to setChildren, that ultimately got the same array, the same object. And so when we changed new array, P1's children also got changed. I think this would be a lot better explained if we draw a diagram.